Hey everyone, Senraikai here. Today I'm going to be talking about a subject pretty much commonly referred to as subs versus dubs, I guess is kind of the best description of it. But pretty much kind of give my opinion on the subject, my perspective, as well as giving some bit of story time about kind of how I transitioned from English dubs to subbed anime. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, then feel free to stick around and listen. So now basically my one sentence quick description of my opinion on the subject is I don't like dubbed anime and I don't watch dubbed anime. But yeah, I did used to watch dubbed anime though. Like that was the first kind of anime that I watched. So, and when exactly did that start? Pretty much back in the like Toonami days. Those of you that are somewhat close to my age would definitely remember Toonami. You know, if you do have a long history of anime watching, right? Because that was kind of like where you got to watch the cool anime like Rurouni Kenshin, Tenchi Muyo, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, Yu Yu Hakusho. Was Yu-Gi-Oh on there or was that a different channel? I don't know. But the point is the first dozen, maybe 2 dozen anime that I ever watched were through Toonami. Maybe 2 dozen's over estimating, but basically that was my introduction to anime, right? And of course, what they played on there were English dubbed anime. And in the case of some companies like 4Kids, they made a conscious effort to erase any Japanese from it, right? So if you're, a little kid just watching it, it's like, hey, cool cartoons. That's as far as you understand it. You don't understand that this is from another country. And before it got to you, they licensed it. They cut out all the original audio, got their own voice actors to put in new audio, erased anything that looked vaguely Japanese, foreign. In some cases, changed rice balls to jelly donuts, changed guns to being just nothing, like just MS Paint, erase them out of the thing so the guys just pointing their fingers at you. Or, editing a gun to look like a silly toy gun, just different stuff like that. If you're a kid watching this, you don't understand any of that. It's like, cool, cartoon, things are happening, this is entertaining, I guess. So, that was kind of the state of that. And that was my introduction to anime, and there was some really cool stuff. Like, I really enjoy Yu Yu Hakusho. Still to this day, one of my favorite shows. But Dragon Ball Z also very iconic, very, got a lot of nostalgia for Dragon Ball Z, of course, as well. But that was the start, right? And at the time, I didn't know these were Japanese at all. In fact, I'm not quite sure exactly when I learned that, but it had to have been around the time where I started watching anime on the computer, because that was the first big transition, is that I'm just sitting in my computer class, guy next to me is on YouTube watching some anime that I've never watched before, and I ask him what website it's on and all that, and then I discover, hey, you can actually just watch anime on the computer, this is crazy. And yeah, from there I just kind of looked for shows that I knew about, and from there people in the comment section would sometimes mention other shows. Because you got to realize that this was before a lot of social media and stuff like that. I'm talking like YouTube barely exists kind of time period. So it's very much word of mouth wherever you could get it, usually like comments on videos and stuff to learn about other shows. And that was kind of how I got from show to show, where I like got from shows that I remember from TV and was just trying to watch again for nostalgia or whatever, or just rewatch it, to actually discovering new stuff. So yeah, I pretty much typed in, the name of the shows, and I would type in like, blah, 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 episode 1, and try to watch it. Then I would click on it, and suddenly I just hear just strange language being spoken. Like, I was like, what? This is not how the character's supposed to sound at all. Like, what's going on here? And then from there I learned that you're supposed to type in dub, if you want to get the English voice actors, But yeah, once I started doing that, I could actually watch the shows dubbed like is what I was used to. And I did that for multiple shows. I would get recommendations from people in comments, check out the show. And I just kept going through that for a decent amount of shows. And yeah, at this point, mostly I was watching anime on YouTube and a website called Vio.com. I don't know if that's even still around anymore, but that was my only other anime website that I watched. I would just go on there and just type episode 1 English dub, and usually just see what pops up. And I watch a lot of shows like really blind as a result of that. Like Higurashi no Naku Koroni is a good example. I just clicked on it because it popped up on there. I knew nothing about it, so I was quite surprised when people started dying and whatnot. So it's always nice when you can go into a show as blind as that. But anyway, that was basically how I went for a decent amount of time. But eventually, what inevitably happens is somebody recommends me a show. I get excited and type in English dub episode 1, and there's no English dub episode 1. There's no English dub at all. And at that point, it's like, well, what do? I either, suffer through these weird foreign voices, or I just don't watch it, right? And I didn't want to watch it with those voices, but at the same time, I wanted to watch it, so... And, there's not really much else you could do. Like, I didn't want to just give up on the idea, so I decided to myself, watching it like this is not great, but it's better than nothing. It's better than not getting it at all, right? So I did that, and I pretty much, it wasn't too bad when I did it. Like, it was doable. So at this point, that's just what I did. If I wanted to watch a show and it wasn't dubbed, I would just suffer through the sub. And then this was just an interesting time period. I don't know how long it was. It probably wasn't really that long, but pretty much it went from that. I watch a dub I watch a dub unless the dub doesn't exist, and then I watch it sub. That was at that point, and then I went from that to eventually okay, if it has a bad dub, I'll just watch it sub instead. And that was like the next step, and I kept it that for a bit, and then it was like, look, okay, I'll watch a little bit of the sub, I'll watch a little bit of the dub and decide which one is better, and then I'll watch it from there. And then I went from that to just kind of like, sometimes they have a sub, so sometimes they have a dub, sometimes they don't have a dub, but they pretty much always have a sub, so why go through the hassle of looking for the dub? Just start with the sub to begin with. And then once I got to that point, it was basically just the fact that dubs even existed just kind of disappeared to the back of my mind, right? Only really ever reminded when I saw like a random clip on YouTube where the person decided to use a dub for the clip, right? So that was pretty much when I made the transition and really just never looked back. Like, once I went fully sub, I felt real no desire to go back to dub, right? And I always kind of assumed that was a transition that all anime fans made, but it seemed like that's not the case. Like, just, I don't know, I mean, I never really fully chronologue, I don't know what the best word for this is, but it seemed like there's just a lot of people on the internet are just, they're dub watchers. That's all they'll ever be. They get hostile whenever you tell them, otherwise, like, tell them the subs are better or whatever. They just get mad or say, I don't want to read, or some variation of that. I used to actually say similar things like that when I was a dub watcher. I really cringe just thinking about it now. I want to watch anime, not read it, stuff like that. Just painful to think about. But yeah, I think there are just people out there that just don't care, and they just, even now I go on my anime list and I see, like the threads at the bottom, a guy's like, when's the dub gonna come out? It's like a new show, and it's like, it's 2023. How do people still care about dubs at all? How do they still prefer to watch anime that way? I still don't really understand it, but at the same time, that you do you. Like, if that's how you enjoy it. I hope that you just gave sub a try to see if you like it or not, and didn't just dismiss it. But aside from that, yeah, just do what you want, I guess. Okay, so why do I prefer subs over dubs? I mean, first of all, it almost feels a little weird to phrase it that way. I mean, I know why people say subs versus dubs, because it's catchier, obviously, but it's not like people like the subs themselves. Like, it's not as if reading the subtitles adds an extra layer of awesomeness of the experience, right? The subs are just a means for you to understand what's being said. It's the Japanese voice acting and everything. That's the draw, right? But it just doesn't roll off the tongue as well, Japanese voices versus dub, I guess. But that's really what you want, right? So, and that's really what the good part of the subs comes from, is the Japanese voice acting, because in Japan, the Japanese voice actors are much more skilled. Like, it's not like in, like America, where it's mostly, the dub actors mostly have a reputation of being like failed real actors. They just do anime because it's a paycheck sort of doing what they want to do, right? With only maybe a very small full of American voice actors that are pretty decent, but you hear them all the time in so many things because they get reused a bunch, right? So it's that kind of situation. But just the overall voice acting quality is much better with the Japanese as a result of that, So that's a big part of it right there. But we also have just the script in general, because these shows are made in Japan. Like, it's not like, what's the best way to phrase this? It's not like the anime comes out of some neutral pot where one pops out, like a different version of the anime pops out of it. The English one over here, a Spanish one over there, a Japanese one over there. It's a Japanese anime. That's what it was concepted to be. And if you decide you want to make it into Spanish or whatever, you take that completed product, you gut it, you shove other things in that kind of make it fit as best you can, tape it over, and call that the product. Like, it's not, two separate but equal things, right? You are just taking something that was completed and having it just butchered so it could be better understood by some foreign audience. So, as a result, it's never truly going to fit or match what it was intended to be. So, I mean, for one thing, obviously a lot of Japanese anime take place in Japan, and if you have everyone speaking English and everything like that, and especially bad if you're like 4 kids and you want to remove anything Japanese out of it, it's just not going to fit very well. There's going to be inconsistencies, there's things that are just not going to make sense or have to be altered just to make some degree of coherent sense. And you end up just a really mishmash, Frankenstein abomination of a product that's masquerading as a different product, right? Because that's one of my big things about... Because for the most part, I don't care if you want to watch dubbed anime, but one thing that does kind of bother me is that when people that do watch a dubbed anime try to put themselves on the same level as people that watch, the original anime. Not that, they're worse or whatever for doing that, but they had a different experience. So if you have a conversation with them about the show, you're not really talking about the same show. So if you have a conversation with this person long enough, that's going to come out. They're going to say something that makes you raise your eyebrow, like, I don't think that happened. I don't think that joke was made. I don't think the character said that. Like, that's going to happen because they didn't consume the same product as you. They're pretending to. The localization company is pretending it's the same product, which is why, even though there was a time where I was kind of not happy when they would really change the title of a show. Like, as an example, B got a HK. The English title for that was Yamada's First Time, which I still think is a terrible title. But if I come up to somebody and they say, "Hey, have you watched that show called Yamada's First Time?" I know for a fact, okay, they watched the dub version, so I don't really want to talk to them, about the show. So, because that way right? So that's the best value in changing the title, is that right off the bat, they watch something different than you, and there's no pretense of otherwise, right? So, because that's the only real complaint I have about dub watchers, is when they try to pretend that they aren't. I guess is the best way to kind of boil that down to. It almost sounds kind of elitist to say something like, I don't want to talk about this show with some filthy dub watcher, but it's really not, because you didn't watch the same show. It's like if somebody watched Game of Thrones and some other guy watched Dexter, they talk to each other as if they watch the same show. That's just nonsensical. Obviously, that's an extreme example, but hopefully it gets the idea across, right? If you specifically want to have a conversation about the differences between the two different versions, that's the premise you're going in with, there could be some value in that, if you want to talk about the changes and whatnot. But that's a little bit of a different beast than just hey, did you watch that show, the newest episode of that show last night? So that's just to clarify a little bit what I meant there, because I don't want it to sound elitist, because it's really not. Anyway, talking more about the subs versus dubs thing. Another big thing is that, like I said, dubs are not... They're a branch off from the original version, right? So, as a result, it's almost like a role-playing kind of feel to it. If you get American voice actors that got into anime voice acting because they watch anime and like anime, you have them trying to the best of their abilities, kind of emulate that anime-ness from the Japanese version, which doesn't translate into English very well at all. So it just has this kind of awkward, cringy nature to it when they try to do it. So it has an element of fakeness to it on top of that, whereas the Japanese version is the original version. It's not trying to be anything else. It's just purely anime. It's trying to be anime. That's all it ever is. That's all it ever will be. That's all it ever needs to be. But with the dub, you just have so much more ambiguity of what you'll end up getting. How much does it try to copy the original? Does it try to copy it at all? Does it just try to throw away the script and, write whatever they want, like the one Ghost Stories dub? There's just so much there that's, if you just want to watch the show, why would you go with something so unpredictable, so messy, and unknown with the dub? To me, it's more if you watch the show, you liked it, you kind of want to have something kind of similar. You might, but different. You might watch the dub, kind of like what people do with a bridge series. They watch a show and then find out it has one of those abridged series on YouTube, and it's not the same show, but it's pretty close. It's got a lot of similarities, but there's some newness to it because it's a difference. So, maybe there could be some benefits there to watch the dub. But like, if you just want to watch the show and actually properly watch the show, you know, what the characters are actually saying, not what the localizers are pretending the characters are saying by erasing the original and, you know, writing over it with the new scripts. Like, if you just want to watch the show itself, the sub is the way to go. And that's pretty much what I want to do. I want to watch this show. I don't want to watch somebody else's fan fiction. I don't want to watch somebody else's platform, someone else's using them, someone else's product as a platform to push their political agenda. Like, I don't want any of that. I just want to watch the show. And that is what you get if you watch the sub version. But yeah, I think that actually might be my biggest problem with dubs, is just the inherent fakeness of it. You're taking these characters that are saying something, like an objective thing that they're saying, but you have the English voice actors saying different things overlaid over it, right? So basically just literally putting words in their mouth, and it's just inherently very fake. Like, it opens yourself up to just so many inconsistencies later down the road if you decide to put in some funny joke, you know? Because I mean, the line between the bridge series and official dubs, it's not, they're more or less the same at this point in some cases. But like, you might think some funny joke to put in here in episode 3, but then episode 7 comes along and they reference what that person said, and that person no longer said it in your version. So now you have to either change it or just accept the audience is going to be confused with what's going on, right? So I just want to know what the characters are actually saying, what's actually going on. I don't need any, you know, funny American humor thrown in there because you think just the Japanese version is too boring or whatever. Like, I don't need your attempt to flare it up or spice it up. I just want to know what the character is saying. Don't lie to me about what the character is saying and just act like, hey, it's all the same thing, right? We're just, you know, conveying this to our audience. But yeah, because for what I think the fakeness, the lying, to me, that is what really bothers me the most about the dubs, honestly. And you might say, like, just because it's a dub, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to, like, change what the characters are actually saying. They could just translate the Japanese and have that be what the voice actors say in the dub. Yes, they could theoretically do that, but, like, you can't rely on that actually being the case. Like, some dubs are going to be better than others at this. Some are infamously bad at this. But, like, it's always a potential. And you never, as a viewer, know when it is or isn't happening. And you're not going to, like, watch the dub and then check later on the Japanese original script to see, okay, were there any big changes here? No, you just want to watch the show, you know, and then watch a different show. You don't want to go through all that. So even though they aren't going to necessarily lie to you with a bunch of the dialogue, they can, and if they do, you have no way of knowing it. So, you know, obviously, if you're okay with the blissful ignorance, that's fine. I'm just saying that I personally am not, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. I mean, one instance that always comes to mind when I think about this subject is a scene from Yu Yu Hakusho. Because I remember when I first downloaded it, it was dual audio, and Yu Yu Hakusho was one of the shows I watched on Toonami on TV as a kid. So I really liked the dub version of that. That's what the show is to me, right? But, you know, because there's certain parts where, you know, obviously now with my more experienced mind of watching a lot more anime, and I'm more familiar with the fact that dubs do like to change stuff and whatnot, you know, certain jokes, I think to myself, okay, that probably was not in the original, so I go and check. And there was a scene where Botan and, what's the cat girl announcer's name? Koto, I want to say. But they were having some kind of argument, and she says something to Botan to the effect of, stick to what you're good at, honey, dye in your hair unnatural colors, something to that effect in the dub line. And of course, that was never actually said in the original. That would be ridiculous. But that's a good example because you're pretty much adding in lore that doesn't exist. Because I'm sitting there, you know, watching the show as a kid, thinking, oh wow, Botan dyes her hair. I didn't know that. I wonder what her normal hair color is. I wonder if we'll ever get to see a scene of her dyeing her hair. That could be pretty cool. You know, maybe Yusuke walks in on it or something. But like, none of that's going to happen because that wasn't actually said. That's not actually part of the lore. That was just some random haha funny joke that the localizers put in there that's now added fake canon, fake lore into the show, right? Which just causes potential for confusion and false expectations. So obviously hair dye is not a big deal, you know, but like hopefully you understand the dangers of it through that. because there's one YouTube, there's a series on YouTube, like a guy doing videos talking about the Pokemon Red localization, and he's kind of like going through the entire Pokemon Red game and talking about the various localization changes. And one thing he always talks about is, you want to keep localization changes to a minimum, because when you make big changes early on, it can have big effects later on. Especially if you add in like fake lore that either has to somehow be retconned later on if it becomes a problem, or you just have to keep digging yourself a deeper hole later on. So, as a localizer, your goal should be to change as least as possible while making sure the audience understands what's going on. That should be your goal, but if you spend any time on Twitter and you see these certain localizers that like to circle jerk on there about how funny it is to piss off all the fans with their changes, right? Because that's a real problem right there. So, I just want to bring up the Yu Yu Hakusho situation, because that's one of the biggest examples of what I'm talking about and why I dislike that kind of dub change sort of mentality. So anyway, back to reasons why I prefer the subs. The other one is just because I already talked about the quality of the voice acting itself in the Japanese side of things, but I don't know what it is about the Japanese voices, but the female voices are so good at sounding cute, and the male voices, when they want to be, are so good at sounding just cool. And the fact that they're just so good at that is just mind-blowing. Because obviously, you got the moe, cute girls doing cute things anime. The voices work for that really well. You got the dub voices. Whenever they try to voice over those characters, it just sounds like a, middle-aged woman trying to sound cutesy, which doesn't work well. Like, especially if you do like cute girls doing cute things anime. I have to imagine dub is especially bad for that. So, and also, when you do have some of the more like, action fighting kind of shows, we have Japanese names for attacks and stuff just sound really cool. And of course, they sound better from people who can actually properly pronounce them. So, if you have an American voice actor trying to pronounce cool Japanese attack names, it's obviously going to not sound great, or it's going to be a struggle to do so. Again, kind of bringing home the fakeness or pretending aspect of trying to you're not watching an English show. When you try to pretend like you are, compromises are going to be made. You're going to get a lesser experience at the end of the day. Like the show Konosuba, I know that is a dub, but I haven't watched it, and I definitely will never do so. But Megumin has her special explosion technique, and she usually gives these long, incantations as she does it. And that's gotta sound really just lame and or stupid in the dub. I have to imagine. I just don't know how you would do it. Not to mention Takahashi Rie, the voice actress, is an incredible voice actress, and having someone else attempt to voice that character, I kind of just want to die just thinking about it, honestly. Speaking of Takahashi Rie, a recent show that aired, Oshinoko, she voiced the main girl in that, and she did a fantastic job. I say main girl, but anyway, I look over to see who the English dub voice actress is, and it's like some literal nobody, And from what I've heard from people, the voice doesn't even really fit the character, right? So just disrespect for such a popular show, it's definitely the most popular show of that season. I don't think anyone could argue otherwise. And it just gets so terrible treatment on the English dub side of things. So you're getting the worst product if you're watching the dub version. Obviously, if you're okay with that and do it knowingly, you have the freedom to do that. I'm not going to tell you not to. But you are getting a lesser experience. And I hope you owe it to yourself to at least be aware of that fact. What you choose to do beyond that is on you. I do think there's a really big gap between the sub and dub watchers. They just kind of live in different worlds for the most part. I don't know, if you're a dub watcher, you're just very much kind of putting yourself in a box of being a casual viewer, just in a lot of respects. Whereas a sub watcher can watch literally anything right after it comes out. There's no hoping it gets a dub or, waiting for the dub or any of that. So it just feels like just two very different experiences, honestly. Obviously I stopped watching dubs long before I started watching seasonal anime, so I can't really imagine what it's like being a dub watcher. Because I think simul dubs are a thing nowadays. I think I heard something vaguely about that years ago, but obviously not relevant to me. But I doubt all shows get that if that is a thing. But just very different experiences altogether. So to kind of sum things up, I prefer the dubs over the subs because I love the Japanese voices themselves, their quality of voice acting, the fact that that's the most genuine, true version of the story and experience that's trying to be conveyed to the audience. And you obviously get it faster than, dubs in a lot of cases. But, so yeah, if I wanted to summarize it, I guess it would pretty much be that. So, and I don't really care if you watch dub, but if you want to talk to me about anime, make it clear to me that you did watch the dub, and then from there I'll decide if I want to talk to you about it or not, based on, whether or not I know you at all, for one thing, but based on the show as well. Especially because I know some shows are just like very, very different in the dub version, to the point where you can't even pretend you watch the same show, right? Ghost Stories, of course, being the obvious one. I think even High School DxD, DD, however you pronounce that name, also very much like that. But yeah, pretty much that's how it is. If you're a dub watcher, just make it clear to everyone that you are a dub watcher, and realize that you're living your life incorrectly. So yeah, this is pretty much the end of the video. I just kind of wanted to try doing some kind of vlogging kind of style video, and I'm sure it didn't go very well because I did not have a script. Like, I had the benefit of being able to pause the recording every once in a while when I wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking of my next thing to say, but obviously no script. But yeah, if there's any other topics you want me to do this kind of video on, I would be open to it if you want to leave a comment about that. But that's all I really got to say. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.